And, Jessica, when we heard him say that, the Biden administration would call, scream, curse, force us to take down certain information, whether it's, COVID or the laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, it sounds very dictatorial.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
What's always been interesting about the narrative when it comes to the government and tipping the scales on social media for getting information they don't want out there is that the timeline never adds up. So Donald Trump was president through 2020. Majority of the COVID misinformation that we're talking about, things like don't inject yourself with bleach, or it's not airborne, or wear a mask, social distancing, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, I can't even remember all of them, came while Donald Trump was president. And guess what? That means that the Trump administration was having conversations with social media companies the same way that it happens in every administration.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
You hear that? That's crickets. As Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced changes to content moderation on Facebook and Instagram, changes long sought by conservatives.
The interactions that I was just referring to, I mean, a lot of this is documented. I mean, because Jim Jordan and the House had this whole investigation and committee into the kind of government censorship around stuff like this, and we produced all these documents, and it's all in the public domain. I mean, basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there.
The timeline never adds up.
Of course, Fox News were swift to pounce on the story and how it was allegedly proof that conservative voices were being silenced. Anyway, in response to yet another tech giant bowing to the will of the incoming president as we prepare for Oligarchy 2.0, Fox News voice of sanity Jessica Tarlov made a point on air that seemed to leave her co-host stunned. That point being how it doesn't add up that the MAGA contingent are clutching their pearls over Biden's camp allegedly screaming at Meta over disinformation when those alleged conversations happened while Trump was in office. No surprise, this was when most disinformation regarding COVID was rife and, at the hope of saving lives, needed to be fact-checked.
Jessica, when we heard him say that, the Biden administration would call, scream, curse, force us to take down certain information, whether it's, COVID or the laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop, I mean, it sounds very dictatorial. I mean, it's pretty anti-free speech.
Yeah. What's always been interesting about the narrative when it comes to the government and tipping the scales on social media for getting information they don't want out there is that the timeline never adds up. So Donald Trump was president through 2020. Majority of the COVID misinformation that we're talking about, things like don't inject yourself with bleach, or it's not airborne, or wear a mask, social distancing, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, I can't even remember all of them, came while Donald Trump was president. And guess what? That means that the Trump administration was having conversations with social media companies the same way that it happens in every administration, that strings need to be attached to this. I have never heard from anybody who's advocating for strings to be attached to aid say this about any other natural disaster. And good on
DeSantis usually does a pretty good job.
Really? Okay. Well, that things have happened other places. Like, let's talk about Louisiana. There's been $120 billion in aid spent on Louisiana in the last 2 decades. Have you ever said anything about Louisiana?
Louisiana doesn't have a history
Don't try to justify
misusing funds to the level of Democrats in California.
I think we should look under the hood of Louisiana for a second. Tom Tillis, to his credit,
they haven't wasted $24 billion on a train to nowhere.
Tom Tillis, North Carolina, said we need to treat everyone the same that we treated the people of Western North Carolina.
But
Rick
at some
Scott said
point,
that as
if
well.
you are delinquent and derelict in protecting
because you want to make a partisan point, and
no,
because
I don't want to make
Trump
a partisan point.
Really?
Jessica, will you? I don't want to make a partisan point.
But as we know, the move by Meta to replace third-party fact-checking with user-written community notes, similar to that we see on X, is the latest example of a media company moving to accommodate the incoming administration.
That was a very disappointing thing to hear.
Alan Duke, a former CNN journalist, runs a fact-checking organization hired by Facebook.
If in the 6 years that we were fact-checking for Meta, we had been politically biased at all, they never said anything. We never heard one example of where that had happened.
Were you surprised by Mark Zuckerberg's decision to shut down the fact-checking program?
I was and I wasn't. There's been a lot of political pressure on journalists generally and fact checkers specifically from the Trump administration and its supporters. I'm surprised that the tech platforms in general are being so accommodating to the government.
And Anderson, look, I mean, it is pretty clear that Meta and Zuckerberg are trying to placate Trump here in many ways with a lot of the moves they've made in the past few weeks. But if you really track what Zuckerberg was saying over the years through 2016, 2020, you could tell his heart was never in this. He never really wanted to have Facebook in this position where they were applying these fact-check labels. So although this is a huge change, a seismic change for the rules on the platform, and remember, billions of people use this platform around the world, millions here in the United States, for Zuckerberg himself, I mean, I do think this is going back to the roots of how he sees this platform, which is a bit hands off.
Let's not forget this comes on the 4-year anniversary of Zuckerberg banning Trump from his platforms after the January 6, 2021 attack on the US Capitol.
This is live tracking all of the reaction to the news that former President Donald Trump is still banned from Facebook, among other social media sites. But this ban could actually be coming to an end very soon.
And to no surprise, with being a good boy now, he's now invited to the inauguration to take his place amongst the other billionaires.
Jeff Bezos came, Bill Gates came, Mark Zuckerberg came. Many of them came numerous times. The bankers have all come. Everybody's coming.
Which, as Bernie Sanders has pointed out so often, this should scare a lot of people.
So, number one, as you've indicated, we right now have more income and wealth inequality than in the history of the United States of America. Okay? And the gap between the very rich and everybody else is getting wider. So, today, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Got it? That's one reality.
Yep.
You got 800,000 people who are sleeping out on the street. Part of that reality. People can't afford housing. They can't afford to feed their families. That's reality number one. But the other reality is that 3 people, that is our friends, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg, 3 people are now worth almost $1 trillion, owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. And the point that I want to stress to the viewers is this is a very, very big deal. And don't think it's not a big deal because it's not discussed on NBC or CBS or Fox. It is a huge deal. And this is not the kind of world, kind of economy, kind of America that we want. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, in terms of the economy, the theory of capitalism is, isn't it great? Everybody's competing against each other. I got a product, you got a product, you're going to compete against me, I'm going to drive prices down, and the consumer makes out well. Right? Is that the theory? Well, guess what? That ain't happening. What's happening is that in sector after sector, a handful of very, very large corporations control what is produced and the kind of prices that we pay. And I'll give you one example again that is not talked about enough, but to me, Dean, it's absolutely unbelievable. And that is 3 Wall Street firms, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, together control, they don't own, control assets of over $22 trillion, and together are the major stockholders in 95% of the S&P corporations. Do you know what power that is? 3 boards of directors having controlling power over 95% of the corporations in America.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.